Europa Universalis IV. This is the perfect game for aspiring artists. Painting has really never felt so powerful. In the least disrespectful way possible, EU4 is Hitler's idea of a perfect world, painting the map while simultaneously plotting world domination. If PC gaming existed back in the 1930s, I like to think that the world would be a much more peaceful place. All jokes aside, EU4 is essentially geopolitics, the video game. It's a grand strategy game created by Paradox Interactive, released in August 2013, where you take control of historically accurate nations from the periods of 1444 to 1821. Or you can do what most EU4 players do and download the extended timeline mod to play from any period from 0 AD to the year 9999. Whatever really floats your boat. If you want to witness the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, go ahead. The rise of Islam, you've got it. Want to be the modern day Genghis Khan? The world's your oyster. Even the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine is on here. So if you want to bring Ukraine to victory, then decide to, annex Russia and Belarus under the reign of President Zelensky and turn Ukraine into a modern day superpower, then you are in luck. Just to give you an example of how wild this game actually is, I recently started a save as Palestine in 2011, holding one singular province. I declared an independence war against Israel, which saw the USA and Turkey come to Israel's aid, whilst Palestine had the support of Syria, Iraq and Saudi Arabia. Despite the crushing odds, Palestine actually came out on top, ultimately annexing Israel and returning some of the unlawfully held provinces by Israel back to Syria. And most surprisingly, we somehow forced Turkey to release Kurdistan as an independent nation. They did shortly end up taking Kurdistan back, but it's the thought that counts, In the 2 decades following the Israeli-Palestinian war, Palestine has arguably become one of the most powerful nations across the Middle East and Africa, and I bet you never thought you'd hear that said. We've been waging wars against Egypt, Sudan, Ethiopia, the Central African Republic, Lebanon, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, just to name a few. In this playthrough, I've taken Palestine from this to this. The ultimate goal of my conquest as Palestine is to wage wars against nations who are holding smaller nations with a desire for independence hostage. For example, freeing Kurdistan from Turkish rule, Yemen from the Saudi regime, and the Wadai tribe from Central African Republic. I did intend on freeing the Western Sahara from Morocco, but Algeria have kind of already done that for me by taking all of Morocco and the Western Sahara. So maybe I've got to save Morocco now. So my future plans for this save involve freeing Catalonia from Spanish rule, Armenia from Iranian rule, and of course the Uyghurs and Tibet from China. As you might have guessed, this game isn't necessarily for everyone. It has a really steep learning curve and a terrible tutorial and tiny buttons that you can really only see if you're using a microscope. So if your typical starter play includes games such as CSGO, Call of Duty, Rocket League, maybe Fortnite, then EU4 probably isn't for you. Now, I'm not trying to diss players of these games. I personally love a good CSGO or Rocket League session, but most players will really struggle with EU4's steep learning curve and complicated game mechanics. There's no real gameplay per se. It's more just looking at a world map and making decisions based on your diplomatic, economic and military capabilities. Now, I'm not going to go into how to play EU4 in this video, but I will link down below what is arguably the best step-by-step tutorial on how to get into EU4 for beginners. Without Radio Res's tutorials, I probably would have given up on EU4 after the initial tutorial, but I am so thankful that I stuck with it. It's really worth it. Another important factor to mention is that EU4 is a slow burn. Sometimes it can feel like watching paint dry. However, most of the time EU4 is actually a time portal. It warps your perception of time. You think you've only been playing for an hour, and then next thing you know, the birds are outside chirping, you realise you have to be at work in an hour and a half, your laptop fan is struggling to keep up, and the only thing in your mind is paint the fucking map. EU4 truly provides you with the feeling that you actually are a ruthless dictator, and all of a sudden you have this strong desire to start an uprising. But then reality kind of sinks back in and you realise that you're nothing more than a 20-something-year-old working class white dude with no real political or military experience playing a video game in your nan's basement. But we roll with it. This game is actually a surprisingly good learning tool about geopolitics because the game is mostly historically accurate. Keyword mostly. You can gain a vast amount of knowledge on the history and specifically the locations of pretty much every country in the world. Hand on my heart, I can genuinely say I've learned more about geography and history from EU4 than I ever did in school. And I studied modern history and geography, so yeah, go figure that one out. If I was a history teacher, I'd probably gift my students this game on Steam and assign 3 hours a week of homework just to play EU4 and make a presentation based on their personal experience and what they've learned within the game. I could fill books about the various experiences that I've had in EU4. No 2 playthrough is ever the same. Now, I know I said that for Warband, but in this case, no 2 playthroughs are ever the same. Like, seriously. I cannot stress that enough. Fun fact, there's actually another game by Paradox called Hearts of Iron 4. another grand strategy game with a focus on the World War. There was actually a Russian dude who clocked, I believe, like over 10,000 hours on this game, and now as a result of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the Russian military actually hired this dude due to his extensive military strategy knowledge learned from Hearts of Iron. So who knows, if you play enough EU4, maybe you really can become a dictator. Who knows? Anything is possible. It's important to keep in mind that whilst you're off having your own adventure into the world of genocide, revolution, and religious reformation, every other country in the world is being simulated by an AI. So don't be surprised when you've paid zero attention to the East Asian section of the map, and then you one day discover that Cambodia has taken over most of mainland Vietnam, Afghanistan is separated into 3 unattached provinces and mostly occupied by Iran, and we also have a unified Korea. But you know what? Taiwan is still surprisingly okay, and they're actually going quite strong, so go Taiwan. But let's talk about what else you can actually do in this game besides painting the map. You can click on any country in the world to view a variety of different options, such as declaring a war, offering an alliance, improving relations, insulting them, offering a royal marriage, building spy networks to fabricate territorial claims, support rebel groups, cause problems within the nation, issuing trade embargoes, sending gifts, offering loans, selling your provinces, asking for military access, everything. The diplomacy screen is like the number one screen that you're going to use. So learn the diplomacy screen. You can also see their military strength, their navy strength, their religion, the type of government they are, all of their diplomatic relations such as alliances, wars, rivals, etc., their corruption index, how advanced they are technologically. Most of the interactive options you have are dependent on your relation and proximity to the country in question. So for example, to offer an alliance or royal marriage, you have to be on good terms with the nation, which you can see here. So your relations with other nations kind of depends on various factors, including who their allies or rivals are, who your allies or rivals are, whether you have a different religion, and if so, the tolerance of other religions of that particular nation. If you get caught building a spy network in that country, that will negatively impact your relationship with them. If you're at war with a different country, you won't be able to make an alliance during wartime. If you've previously been to war with a country, then they'll probably hate you. If you've been on a major conquest taking over pretty much all of your neighbouring provinces, then other countries in the area are going to be suspicious of you and fear that you'll do the same to them, which, let's be honest, we are going to, but they don't know that yet. If you go too large and really are becoming the modern day equivalent of Genghis Khan, multiple nations around the world, even some that you've may never even heard of or interacted with in the game, they might form a coalition against you, meaning that if you declare another conquest war, everyone in the coalition is going to join on the opposing side. So EU4 really isn't just as easy as painting the map. There are 1,000,001 things that you need to manage and maintain in order to not start World War III and have a great empire that you spent 50 real hours creating, or end up falling like the Mongol or Ottoman Empire inevitably did. Can you prove yourself to be better than these once great empires? Let's find out. In addition to diplomacy, you can manage so many other aspects of your nation. You have to manage your economy and trade nodes to make sure that you aren't losing money and heading straight for bankruptcy, a problem that once you become a relatively large country becomes increasingly harder to escape. You have to manage your administrative, diplomatic and military technology to stay in or ahead of time, to put yourself above the other countries in the game. There are loads of different idea groups and institutions that you can embrace to give yourself specific boosts and run the country in the way that you really want to run it. Whether that be an equal pro-choice democracy or a ruthless totalitarian dictatorship, the choice is entirely yours. If at any point you feel like you need some guidance for your next move, most countries have unique missions that you can try to accomplish to gain helpful benefits, though these missions aren't really mandatory and some of them you'll probably complete without even meaning to. If you're playing the extended timeline mod, which I highly recommend, you can make national decisions such as constructing nuclear weapons, starting space programs, enacting policies to improve things such as taxes, religion, stability, things like that. You can also manage and change the religion of your nation to reflect real religions such as Islam, Christianity, Buddhism. You can convert heretic provinces to your religion of choice. You can also force other nations to be your vassal, meaning that they are still technically independent but will join any war that you partake in and pay you a monthly tax. Interestingly, as Palestine, my only vassal is Cameroon, of all places. They pay me virtually nothing a month, maybe like 0.3 gold a month. But they do have a reasonable manpower reserve, a good relation with us, an important strategic position for future invasions of West Africa, and best of all, they have 0% liberty desire, meaning they have zero desire to become independent and they're perfectly happy being a Palestinian vassal. In what world would you ever see Cameroon as a Palestinian vassal? Like, alternate history fans, yo. EU4, the best. Another large gameplay feature that will almost definitely become a huge problem the more land that you acquire is having to deal with internal conflicts. When you take over certain provinces who have different religious or ethnic majorities to your nation, then you might have some rebellions to overthrow. These rebellions usually have different aims. They typically either want to overthrow your government, want independence for their own country, or convert your country to their religion. These rebellion groups can become a huge problem. I've seen rebels with more military units than a global superpower. I'll never forget the time I was playing as Korea in the 16th century. I took over the whole Korean peninsula, the vast majority of eastern China, I annexed Japan, I had colonies in South America, East Africa. In short, you could say I had my fingers in a whole lot of pies. As a result of this global domination, most of Europe and Central Asia had formed a coalition against me, and I had rebels aggressively fisting me from every angle. The worst of the bunch being a group of rebels in Japan seeking independence, which had amassed an army of about 330,000 men. At the time, I'd relocated my capital to the Hong Kong region of China, and I only had about 50,000 troops stationed on the Korean peninsula and Japan combined. So the rebels conquered the Japanese Isles before I even had a chance to get there, and they successfully gained independence. This resulted in Korea losing prestige on the global stage and sparking independence movements all over the Korean Empire, essentially causing a 16th century equivalent of the Arab Spring, and what could truly be considered the first real world war, where by the mid-17th century Korea had lost more than half its empire. So yeah, there's a lot that can happen in this game. There is also a multiplayer feature of the game where you and your friends can take control of different nations across the world, and you can battle both the AI and each other. I haven't got too much personal experience on this feature, as I tried it once and it was very choppy, and there was a time delay where the game would keep pausing for the other person's internet to catch up to the same date, which was pretty much unplayable for me. But if you have good internet, you probably won't have this issue. I don't feel qualified enough to speak in depth on the multiplayer side of the game, but I highly recommend checking it out if this is something that you're interested in. Now, what kind of reviewer would I be per se if I only focused on the positives? After all, every game has its downsides, and EU4 is not short of downsides. As previously mentioned, the game has a very steep learning curve. And I mean a very steep learning curve. Imagine trying to pull a rubber dinghy up Mount Everest by your teeth, except you're also in the dinghy. That's the kind of learning curve that I'm talking about here. But if you follow the tutorials created by Radio Res in the description below, you'll have a much smoother introduction than just following the in-game tutorials. Seriously, Paradox need to hire this dude. On the topic of Paradox, the game developers are arguably the biggest downside of the game itself. The base game sits at around £35 on the Steam store, which is ridiculous for a 10-year-old game. I highly recommend picking it up during a Steam sale, as it often goes below £10. But the thing that really pisses me off about Paradox, and I mean it really pisses me off, is that they continuously release unnecessary, overpriced DLC content for the game. In fact, there's over like 30 different DLCs for this game, and the total cost of all of the DLC will set you back about £375 British pounds. Not including the base game at £35, can I just add? And honestly, you don't even need any DLC. There are so many amazing mods on the Steam Workshop for pretty much every scenario that you could imagine, and with mods like Extended Timeline, who needs DLC? I've clocked over 100 hours in the Extended Timeline mod, and never once have I felt like it was missing something or had the desire to throw my hard-earned money at Paradox. Just for reference as well, you can get a direct flight, return by the way, to Morocco from London for about £70, meaning for the cost of all of the EU4 DLC, you can go back and forth to Morocco from London 5 separate times. And as much as I love EU4, I love Morocco a little bit more. Anyway, thank you for taking the time out of your extremely busy schedule to listen to me ramble about how much I love this game. To answer the initial question, the whole point of the video, is Europa Universalis IV still relevant in 2023, a decade from its original release? If you haven't gathered by now, my answer is emphatically yes. Of course it is. With thousands of hours of content and truly unlimited replayability, this game is definitely worth sinking countless hours of your limited time on planet Earth into. If you've enjoyed the video, please do me a favour and like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe if you want to see more content like this. I'll be honest, I've had a crazy year of travelling all around the world, from places like Costa Rica, Colombia, South Korea, Morocco, most of Europe, and that means I haven't really had time to make any videos, but now I'm back in the comfort of my own home, my own country, and if you guys want to see more, please feed my ego and motivate me. Have a great day, guys. Peace out.